It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Breakfast, into another weekend and a little bit closer to Christmas. Yes, the property information heads your way every morning, 7 days a week. And we have been covering a lot of it over the last 300 plus days. And it is a Saturday, December the 14th today. If you're just trying to get that final bit of transaction done today, trying to get in before Christmas, all the very best of luck with that. And oh yeah, yesterday I was talking about not liking Christmas music, gave my reasons why, relating back to my radio days of being forced to sit in a studio and play it. And I invited your emails, didn't I, if you were feeling sympathetic? Well, I have to say that backfired. I got emails from, and good morning to you, Ray, in Brisbane, Jonathan in Perth, and Amanda in Melbourne. Your comments ranged from, Craig, that is sad. This is a cheerful time of the year. Another email read, what is the address for me to send you the greatest Christmas music CD ever made? And another one, how can you not like Christmas music when you see the joy that it brings to everybody's faces? So those were some of the emails, and I have to say thank you, Tom in Sydney, because you came through, you emailed through saying, I'm with you all the way. It's cheesy, cringy and commercialised. Let's start a movement, Tom said. I wouldn't go that far, Tom. It's just not for me, and apparently not for you either. Good stuff. If you'd like to email us, don't forget the email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Yes, Christmas just around the corner. Now, we're catching up with Anthony Landau from Equilibria Finance, the mortgage property guru who knows his real estate inside out. And good morning to you, Anthony. Welcome back to the Real Estate Breakfast. Sydney's median prices. And I guess the question is, where does Sydney sit as an affordable city to live in? Well, I think we all know the answer to that, don't we?
Yeah, g'day, Craig. Great to be here, and it's almost a rhetorical question, that in the sense that we all know how unaffordable Sydney has become. We hit over $1.6 million median house value. That was back in May, but interestingly enough, it's the second most unaffordable city in a recent affordability report in the world, behind Hong Kong.
Yeah, so certainly no surprise just how expensive Sydney property is. People are constantly chasing down the finance, to get the money to be able to finance themselves, lever themselves into their first property, second or third. So finance is absolutely critical, but it is a busy time, isn't it, around getting your finance all in order?
I guess our main tips for those thinking about buying over the next 3 to 4 months is get your house in order. Understand your deposit, understand what you can purchase, and get a good, strong pre-approval in place so that when you're at that auction, when you're talking to a buyer's agent potentially, when you're talking to a real estate agent, you understand your capacity, you understand your limit, and you're actually in a position to make an offer to purchase a property, because it's a competitive market out there. Vendors are looking at selling their properties listed, so you want to be ready to go. So check out your pre-approval if you've got one in place. Talk to your broker, understand how long is left on that approval. Extend it if you need to, and make sure you understand, number one, you're pre-approved for, what you can buy for, and also number two, what you're comfortable with. What are your repayments going to be? Can you manage these?
Yeah, and the one thing that we know about higher prices is that it often impacts the way that people look at leveraging themselves into mortgages. And what some of the mindset is from people when they weigh up whether or not to buy in Sydney or to move somewhere else. Of course, there is this segment of cash buyers that this doesn't apply to. But more importantly, what are you seeing regarding these higher prices and how it's impacting the mortgage holders' behaviour and their credit flows, particularly around all of that mindset that I mentioned?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we're essentially seeing this growth despite an array of downside risks or factors. There's the cost of living, interest rates have increased, affordability challenges, serviceability has gone down 30 to 40% over the last couple of years since interest rates have risen. So people just can't afford to live where they want to anymore in a lot of cases. So what we're seeing from owner-occupiers a shift in where they want to live. They're moving to some of these outer suburbs. They're moving to some of these regional areas because for two reasons. They just can't actually borrow as much, and it's harder to save for a deposit in this challenging environment. The other trend we're seeing is some first home buyers actually purchasing an investment property. The rent vesting trend is increasing, where we're seeing some people go, look, I want to live here, I'm going to rent, and I'm going to buy in an area that maybe I can live in down the track, or at least get a foot in the market and buy it as an investment property in an area that's more affordable. Some of those investors are even buying outside of Sydney and New South Wales now into other states that are more affordable. And we've touched on in the past, Craig, it's been a bit of a split market. We've focused on Sydney today and New South Wales, but we've seen growth in Perth, Adelaide and Brisbane anywhere from 23 to 16% over the last 12 months because they are deemed more affordable. And nationally, we're seeing that drift to more affordable areas, and mortgage holders are reflecting in terms of their behaviour, looking at those more affordable properties with their couple of challenges around how much can they borrow and the challenges of finding money to save for a deposit, and then all of the cost of living pressures that are coming through at the moment as well.
All right, we're talking to Anthony Landau on our Saturday morning. We will come back. We'll talk more property after this.
Each week, we bring you in-depth real estate discussions, including inspiring stories from homeowners, knowledgeable real estate professionals and economists. Whether you're a buyer, seller, or just a real estate enthusiast, we are your ultimate property podcast.
And right now it's time for another 30-second property tip. Let's go to Christian in Byron Bay. And good morning, Christian. What have you got for us this morning?
Good morning. Yes, well, I think for me, your conveyancing and solicitor scenario is absolutely crucial. You must really have a good team behind you that dot their I's and cross their T's, because once you're in and you've signed that paperwork, you don't want to be left holding something that is going to be a problem on a resale. So I really recommend searching or getting recommendations of fantastic solicitors, conveyancers, and paying an extra few $100s for that great service. Really just doing your thorough due diligence.
Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs, and hidden gems.
And another weekend of real estate. And with us is Anthony Landau. And we were just talking before the break about investors. They are fleeing some states and changing their strategy. So what can you tell us, Anthony, around this whole change-up, changing the gears through different strategies that investors are looking at?
Yeah, I touched on before that investor credit growth was back at sort of 2017 levels. We saw a real drop after COVID in investor credit flows from 30% of the market in March 22. It dropped about 30% from March 22, about $11 billion a month. March 23, it was about $7.5 billion a month, and it's grown again back in and around the $11 billion again. So investor credit flows are up. The flip side of that, which presupposes there's investor activity. The flip side of that is there are some areas investors are dumping properties. The high mortgage costs essentially exceeding the rental increases. For example, Victoria's added some tax burdens with land tax thresholds being changed. There's a tax levy now on Airbnb properties. So investors are fleeing Victoria, for example. In New South Wales, over 40,000 rental properties have turned into private dwellings, i.e. owner-occupiers, in the last 12 months. So we're really seeing investors in Victoria being turned off by taxes effectively, and in New South Wales they're struggling with the rising rates and costs to hold. So investors are looking at other areas. Investor credit still remains strong. So I guess some of those opportunities are in some of the towns like Perth and Adelaide, as we touched on, where there's that real strong growth in the rental growth. And we're also seeing a lot of investors change their properties from private rentals or essentially long-term rentals to Airbnb properties where they're getting a higher return. So what we're seeing is a shift in properties, which is putting more stress on the long-term rental market where people are going to short-term rentals. We're also seeing some owner-occupier home buyers looking at buying an investment because they just cannot afford to get into the market where they want to live. So they buy a property as an investment in an area that potentially they might look at living in before. So there's a bit of a shift in investor behaviour going on. That's reflected in the strong credit flows. Some of the more traditional investor areas in New South Wales and Victoria, people are leaving behind at the moment.
And just finally, I guess we should say, where are the opportunities at the moment for investors if they're looking to invest?
Yeah, look, I think at a high level, we're seeing the more strategic investor in the market at the moment with a long-term view. They've got the equity, they've got the cash flow to hold their properties. They're getting existing properties revalued. They're using equity. Then we're finding the investor growth in those areas where those median house prices are still affordable. And even though we've seen strong growth in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, they're sort of some of the main areas and the regional areas within those major capitals where we're seeing some of that strong investor growth and strong investor opportunities that have the fundamentals of good infrastructure, a good demand for rental properties and maybe a bit of a shortfall in supplies. Even though some of those areas have had strong growth, relatively speaking, they are still more affordable. And from an investor point of view, there's probably more growth ahead given the supply and demand mismatch in those areas that I touched on around Perth, Queensland, Adelaide and the regional centres around those areas. That's where we're seeing some good strong growth still.
All right, Anthony Landau, we will leave it there on our Saturday morning. Enjoy your weekend. Go and have a surf. Look forward to catching you back in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, looking forward to it and have a great weekend, everyone.
We don't just report on real estate news, we take you to the source of the information. We produce more property podcasts every week than anyone else. We are your trusted guide for all things real estate.
When you say that, a lot of people will sort of go, what? What are you talking about, self-insuring? You've got a large portfolio. This is something that you've been thinking about, self-insuring right across that portfolio of properties.
And this isn't something that I recommend for everyone. And if you have a single property, this may not be the best way to go. But when I think about all of the properties that I have, and I think about the insurance premiums that I'm now paying, then I'm probably looking at around $60,000 to $80,000 a year in insurance premiums. But I'm thinking about the fact that, at $80,000 a year, after 3 or 4 years, I've probably already got enough money in that fund to rebuild one of the houses anyway.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.